So today I'm going to do a very quick demo on how you can tap a screw thread in a piece of material such as this one here. And for those of you that don't know, a screw thread works in the same way as this nut and bolt. So these each have a screw thread on them. So the bolt has an external thread, and you can see that's a little sort of pattern. It's basically a helix shaped wrapped around the length of the bolt. The nut has the opposite, it has that on the inside. So when you get the two together, you can just twist them together and the nut spins over the bolt. And this is going to be the mechanism that makes our G-clamp work. So if we hold the nut in place and we twist the bolt, then you can see the bolt twists through and moves up. And that works in exactly the same way as the G-clamp I've got here. If I turn the screw thread, and if I've got something in between there, it can clamp it together. So this is how our whole mechanism works. So to make this work, the first thing we need to do is drill a hole in our piece of material. And it's really important that we get the hole exactly the right size. So imagine I wanted to create a thread for this bolt to fit through. If you drill a hole that's too big, like this one on the end, then the bolt just moves straight through. It slides straight through, and even if you twist it, it just means that it can drop through. So that's not going to work for our G-clamp. So I've got a 6mm bolt here that I'm going to use for the demonstration. If I drill a 6mm hole like this one here, as we found out, it just drops all the way through. So I'm going to drill a 5mm hole, so a little bit smaller than the bolt that we want to create a thread for. And from there, we can start to create our thread. And I just drilled that with a cordless drill. If you're doing this for unit R110, you'll be making your holes using the center lathe so that they all line up. So to create the thread, we need one of these, which is a tap, and this is a little cutter, and this creates that screw thread on the inside of the part. To turn it, we then have a handle, and the way this works is you just loosen off the handle by undoing the screw. Then you can drop the tap in place and tighten it up. And sometimes you might need to get a pair of pliers on here to get a decent grip on there. And then this allows us now to get a good bit of force on the rotation. So that it cuts cleanly, we're going to use some cutting compound. This is a little bit of grease that just helps it all to keep moving. You don't need a lot of this at all. A very tiny amount on the end of the tap, just like so, and that will work perfectly. Now what we do is we start off by lining up the tap into the hole, and you want to make sure this is going in nice and straight at 90 degrees. It may not look like it because of the camera angle, but I can assure you it is going in straight. You then start to twist the tap using the handle, and it might take a couple of turns until it starts to bite into the material and grip. You'll know when it does because you can take your hands away and it stays standing up. Then once it gets going, so you give it the first couple of turns, and now what we're going to do is turn it half a turn forwards, so that's clockwise. We're then going to turn it backwards just a little bit to clear any swarf out the way, and then you repeat again. So it's another half a turn forward, a little bit back, half a turn forward, a little bit back, and you keep doing that process until the tap comes all the way through and out the other side. Now I'm doing this with a piece of plastic, so it is quite soft, quite easy. You're going to be doing this on a piece of steel, so if it doesn't go in quite straight, then you'll find that the tap will bind up. If the tap does bind up, you just remove it by unscrewing it, and eventually when you get all the way through, it should be able to twist it with your finger. And then if I just take it out of the vise very quickly, you'll see that the tap has come out of the bottom of the piece. I'm now going to clamp that back up in the vise. You can then unscrew it by going anti-clockwise, just support the tap at this point. Then once you've done that, the tap should come out really easily. Again, if it jams up, don't twist too hard, otherwise you can snap these. And if you snap a tap inside your piece of metal that you're working on, then you are going to break it. So there we go. The tap's there, all nice and clean. You can then get a piece of the paper towel, just clean away any excess cutting compound, and then you can test your screw thread using either a piece of threaded bar or you can use a bolt like this one. So if I now just twist this one through, you can see that it now starts to go into the thread. And that's how it works. So that's how we go from a blank piece of material to creating a screw thread.